Welcome back, everybody, to Constructive Uncoupling, the podcast devoted to amicable divorces. I'm Judy Weigel, your host and amicable divorce expert. Why? Because that's all I do, amicable divorces. We've heard a lot of different topics being discussed on this podcast already. Today, I'm so very excited to interview somebody that I think you're going to be fascinated with, as am I. His name is Sebastian Schug. Hello, Sebastian.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. I'm thrilled that you came here. Sebastian came to me in an unusual way. I have not divorced Sebastian. He's 21 years old and not yet graduated from college, although he is an ambitious entrepreneur. Sebastian came to me because we are connected by LinkedIn, and isn't this wonderful how we can make contacts through so many social media platforms? Sebastian came to me because he is a brilliant and amazing illustrator and author. He's been doing this since he was 14 years old. He's also a publisher. He lives in Burbank, and he has a unique business model that I honestly consider somebody well advanced of his years would think of. The fact that he has a business model that creates passive income and allows his clients to not spend money while promoting their creative projects is something I would never expect out of somebody not yet graduated from college, but maybe that shows my limitations. When Sebastian called me, I said, well, you know, this podcast is devoted to divorce, and let me ask you, are you a child of divorce? He said, yes. I said, excellent. I love interviewing people who have been through divorce, either the principals going through divorce or children, because the most important part of a divorce is the co-parenting. All the other stuff can be easily dealt with, the division of assets and debts, and at the end of the day, it's going to be dealt with. But co-parenting is the piece of the divorce that keeps on giving. And if not done properly, can truly affect the children of the marriage. That is why I asked Sebastian to be part of this. And he's also a Gen Zer. I think this is important as well, because with each generation, we have our ideas of marriage, we have our ideas of having children and how we raise children. He's current. He is a product of the co-parenting going on right now. I wanted him to share his experiences through his parents' divorce. And then he's going to tell you a little bit about himself at the end, because I really think everybody should meet him in his chosen field. So, Sebastian, now we're going to talk about your experience in the divorce. How old were you when your parents started the filing for the divorce?
So I was 3 years old when it happened. Again, you know, being 3 years old and not having a grasp of anything that's happening around you, it just sort of happened. And again, it wasn't till much later till I realized what had happened, why it happened. But it was at that early age that the filings were made.
How long? And I don't know if you can probably speak to it because you're older now. How long did it take for your parents to finish?
I would say that it took maybe a few years. I would guess at around 2. I mean, it was amicable, you know, it was joint custody. And in essence, I don't think it may have finished soundly in court, but the emotional toll lasted many years.
What do you mean by the emotional toll? And on who?
Of course. No, I would say, you know, quite personally, it affected my mother a great deal. It affected myself when I realized that, you know, the idea of a traditional Norman Rockwell family sitting at the dinner table eating dinner wasn't a part of my life. And it would never be a part of my life. I would soon grow on to think. I mean, of course, now both of my parents have remarried, they've lived happy lives, and, are still alive today with their newly married spouses. I think the idea of the traditional marriage was taken away from me at such a young age for reasons that I now understand were for the better. And do I wish that things would have turned out differently? No, because both my parents are finally happy of where they are now. And that's something that I would need to put aside my own selfish belief of, I wish this would happen for their own sake. And, it was, I believe it worked out for the better. And I've grown up to understand that.
Did you have siblings?
I did not have siblings initially off the bat. I do have a half-sister as of now, who's currently 7. And, I see her from time to time, and I would treat her just as any other sibling would, The age difference is there, myself being 21 and her being 7, so there is really no relatability outside of blood. But, of course, I get along with her. Of course, I still interact with her and call her every now and then. She lives with my stepmom, and, I don't treat her any differently as, flesh and blood, normal brother or normal sister.
What was it like when your mom remarried and a new person, a stepdad, was brought into your life? What was that like, getting comfortable?
I had grown up with the idea that a step-parent, stepmom and dad, which I do have both, I had grown up with the idea of that's okay. Because at a young age, I realized, mom or dad is happy with another man or woman. And again, something out of my control at the age of, I want to say 7, 8, when I was really starting to realize how things were changing around me. I had read my fair share of children's books and dealing with divorce and dealing with new people coming into my parents' lives. And one thing that I did know at such a young age was that these people better not hurt my parents. You know what I mean? It's a matter of, because people have that fear of these new people. Who are they? What are they going to do to my mom or my dad? And it just sort of goes from there. Thankfully, nothing happened of that sort. You hear a lot of horror stories in the news, but I was blessed that wasn't the case.
Interesting. You felt protective for both your mother and your father.
Yeah.
I have not heard anybody say that yet. So you were about, how old were you when your mom remarried?
When my dad remarried, I was 6 years old.
He was the first one to remarry. Okay.
Yes. And my mom remarried when I was about, I want to say, 11 or 12. The relationship was rocky, admittedly, in the first, I want to say, 5 years of that time period, because at that time there were 3 parents. There was my mom, my dad, my stepdad. And the turmoil of another woman being there, having the title of mom, really made me feel uncomfortable at first. The fact is, did I believe that this woman was trying to take my mom's place? Admittedly, yeah, in the beginning.
I think probably every child, a young child, may go there, you think?
I mean, I realized that wasn't the case.
Yes.
Because, of course, this woman wasn't going to take my mom away, and I was still seeing both of them equally. So I had a chance to experience, I looked at it as an opportunity not of one's replacing the other, but what these 2 different women could bring to the table for me and how they could raise me as their own child, It's really not something a kid that age would think about, but when you're kind of thrust into that environment, you tend to make the best of a situation,
So that we can help people listening improve their relationships with their children as they're going through divorce and creating blended families. Is there anything, in your opinion, that could have been done differently as the new stepmom came on board?
I definitely could have been a lot nicer. I mean,
I
no.
didn't mean you actually, but thank you. Speak about that when we're going to go, and then I want to,
of course, yeah,
your view and what your parents could have done. But please speak about what did you do? Because kids act out.
I didn't lash out per se. I didn't get violent or anything. I didn't get confrontational. It was just more curiosity and sort of, in the beginning, I would say for both stepchildren and step parents, the relationship, it is a hazing process, and everyone's pushing each other's buttons to see, who's going to stay and who's going to, be the first to get mad. I can't speak for the perspective of my step parents personally, but in my experience, it was weird in the first couple of years, and then when I finally started to realize that this person genuinely loves my original parent, my mom or my dad, it just sort of all flowed naturally of, this person's not going to hurt them, this person's not going to hurt me. It just kind of fell into place.
The dynamic between your parents. So I think it's harder for the parent who hasn't found a relationship yet to adjust. Do you think that's a fair statement?
That's definitely, speaking personally, my mom was definitely very much affected by this new marriage, and I won't go into too personal details, but I will say that a lot of that anger I did feel from her. I sensed that there was an imbalance, that maybe someone moved on too quickly and the other one didn't know how to react to it, and it's just, I definitely understand being in as many, myself personally, the amount of relationships I've been, and feeling as if one hasn't properly moved on, or maybe getting into a relationship too quickly, getting into a relationship too slowly. I feel out of both parents, one definitely took their time, you know what I mean?
Right.
Into settling back down again.
Understood.
Yeah, and it happens, And
it happens. And so one of the things that people have brought to me as a divorce mediator and as a document preparation company, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a document preparation company who files for amicable divorces, and I work with both people. The parents have come to me and asked me to put in the settlement agreements in the custody section that when it's time to introduce the children to a new significant other, they want it written that there has to be a monogamous relationship for at least 6 months, and that the other parent will be introduced first to the new significant other before the children are introduced. How do you feel about that as a child who had to experience blended families?
That's definitely not how it went, at least in my case. I mean, I was the one who got introduced to my step-parents before the other parent was. And was that for the best? Probably, I would say, because, I mean, I'm going to be the one spending the most time with them, and I have to learn how to adapt to what they can bring to the table. Is it wrong for, let's say, a stepmother and a regular mother, or a stepfather and a regular father to meet? No, it's not. And I feel like that there can be a relationship that, well, not a relationship, but I wouldn't sort of a meeting of the minds, or a mutual agreement or understanding of, hey, this is how it is. We don't necessarily have to be friends. If we are, great, but the bottom line is the child, and that's what it should be about. So there should be no fighting. There should be no disagreement. And if there are, please feel free to contact me at XYZ number.
It's the hardest thing in the world. My heart goes out to parents with kids and they come in here to get divorced. I just couldn't be harder. So did you ever have to go to therapy?
Not until I was much older.
Should you have, now in your opinion, should you have gone into therapy earlier, or?
I don't think I would have maybe understood it or would have given it much thought or really would have been appreciative of it, because at the time I realized divorce and remarrying as a situation that was out of my control. What's a therapist going to tell me to make me feel any better or, put me at ease. A therapist is not going to wrench me out of the situation I'm in. So for the longest time, I realized, what are they going to do to help? It wasn't until I was much older that I realized that, when these things happen, it's not wrong to talk to someone about this. Especially, and I feel especially as a male, people view therapy as weak, and I really want to kind of shut down that stereotype. It's definitely okay. I with the knowledge that I know now, and with how I've processed it over the last few years, I don't regret just now starting therapy, or just now going through it, or however long I've done it. I don't even remember. But
later rather than
earlier, yes. Yeah.
Talk to me about the visitation schedule, because this is one of the most important aspects, other than parents getting along. Number one, parents getting along in front of the children is the number one thing you can do to support the positive mental health and emotional health of your child. Agree or disagree?
Oh, definitely agree. Now, I'm not saying that it happened. I'm not saying that behind closed doors they didn't go back to hating one another, because they did.
But in front of
me, yeah.
And this is not to make any parents wrong. And always, this is to support helping everybody do better at their challenges and their positions in life. But were your parents able to be agreeable with one another in front of you?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, that's excellent. I know you were 3, and it took a few years to get divorced, but did you have fears when the co-parenting schedule started about anything?
I mean, I knew despite the schedule, I was going to see my mom and I was going to see my dad at the end of the day, right? So it wasn't a matter of I'm not going to see them ever again, because I will. And the visitation schedule was fairly simple. I would say maybe 3 days a week I would see my mom, 3 days a week I would see my dad, and every other weekend it would alternate. So no one parent had more or less time than the other. And in terms of holidays, those were as well alternated. So, everything worked on a 50-50 scale. And that was about as simple as as really any amicable, joint custody divorce could be. I know a lot of situations one parent has more than the other.
For different reasons?
Yeah, no, of course. I think there's more of a negative connotation when it comes to that, or more so something negative associated with it, like, domestic abuse. Obviously, one household is safer than the other.
Yes.
That wasn't my case, and thankfully it wasn't. And, the joint custody, it worked out in the way that it worked out. Did it work out well? It was inconvenient. But
what was inconvenient?
Well, it was inconvenient in the sense that, as you grow older, you start to become detached from your parents, and you start to become more attached from your peers. And, I'm not going to lie to you when I say that there were some days where my friends would want to hang out and I would be with my dad. And to give you a frame of reference, I've lived in Burbank all my life, and when the divorce did happen, my father would eventually end up moving to another town. Not out of the state of California, but more so it was a drive, and I couldn't drive yet. So it was a matter of, I can't see you today, I'll try for this weekend. Oh wait, I can't this weekend because I'm with him, or I have something going on with my mom. A lot of, I would say, missed opportunities on growing up with friends. I mean, I still have my friends, I still love them to death, but that time, it was very inconvenient because of this divorce. I mean, I couldn't blame anyone besides my parents, and at that time,
sound like a blamer.
I'm not, and I can't blame them, because it's a matter of what I finally understood was happening, and I just kind of let it be, and I found other ways to keep myself busy, and I'm not sad about that. It sort of happened,
I love your spirit. So
yeah.
I want to segue into you started your career as an illustrator and author at age 14. What happened at age 14? And when you tell me what happened, was this one of your safe zones that you could go to as a result of everything you dealt with the visitation and the divorce?
The career for me came at the most opportune time, I feel like. So I didn't start off writing just yet. I mean, I wrote here and there little stories, but again, no outlet to publish it in. Not yet. So I began with illustration, and the first sort of contracted project that I got hired on to do was a children's book. Now,
say the name of it.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's called The Adventures of Daniel.
Good.
And the author's name is Renee Gazarian.
And you did the illustrations.
And I did the illustrations, okay. Yeah. So I didn't write the story, I just provided the illustrations. And what this book was your standard, American family, mom, dad, son, dog. The adventures in the eyes of a 6-year-old, 5-year-old, And what that was for me, I think on a surface level was a job. But looking more introspectively, it was more so the ideal life that I never had. And that's why I sort of was attached to it more than I think any artist is attached to a project, because it was more so along the lines of, someone going to the beach, someone going to the park, someone having a barbecue, and just simple things, right? But it was the simple things that I never got to experience. And I think if I was labeling this book as more than a children's book, I think if it was more of a call to action, it's more so to appreciate the moments that you have with your family. While they're together, if they're not together, that's fine. I'm not saying that it isn't possible. But I'm saying that, being appreciative of the time you spend with your children or the time you spend with your spouse, assuming you're still married to your spouse, is very important. And as it went on, I started looking at it as less and less of like a job, as, in all honesty, tedious, because it started off with one book, it morphed into 5, and then it transferred into a whole series of 30. And it was very much like, okay, one book after the other. And then I started getting more and more attached to it, to the point where I could do more work at a time because of, my personal experiences. And I hope to one day, to put this on record, to have with my potentially future children, Not saying I have any right now, but if there was a gold standard of how I'd want a family to go, it would be of what I depicted in that book.
Should people going through divorce have their kids read some of these books?
I think that the child should have an understanding of what's going on, and more so the reality of this isn't going on. And what I mean by that is not in a harsh manner of this can't be possible, because obviously the child's going to look at their family, wonder why it didn't work out, and then potentially grow up and have it not work out for themselves because that's what they were so used to. But what I'm saying is it is possible. It is possible to have that circumstance where, let's say, parents don't work out, but they get remarried. Child grows up in a situation of divorce, but they end up getting married and don't get divorced to their spouse, and so on and so forth. So I'm not saying that... I'm saying that the future doesn't look bleak. But going back to your original question of should, parents...
Would this be helpful?
Would this be helpful? It definitely sets a standard, especially at that young age where they realize that not all families are the same, that some families are divorced and some families aren't divorced. And at that age, they realize it from kids on the playground.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Now, this is a perfect time to transition to your views of marriage. So you're 21 years old. You're going to be graduating from college next year?
May 2020, yes.
May 2020. You're a Gen Zer. Will you please share your views of marriage and where they came from? And do you think you're representative of your generation?
Well, yeah, sure. So my views on marriage are obviously, as as it's been going on, it's very skewed. I've come from a background of divorce. Is that all I know? Of course not. I've had instances where I've witnessed families who aren't divorced and are fine. I've witnessed families who are divorced and are even better than they were married. And I'm not saying divorce has to be a bad thing. It's often a very good thing. Of course, most children my age at 3 aren't going to understand that. But in regards to my view on marriage as a whole, I would definitely say I associate more so with the baby boomers and the Gen Xers who would prefer to stay together and to work things out, other than to, I feel, have a higher rate among millennials and Gen Xers who I've noticed become more divorced in recent years. I don't know if that was more so the question or...
Well, now I have to say, I am a baby boomer, but I have interviewed a Gen Xer, and I have read the stats on millennials. And what I have read is they want to get married later or not at all. They realize that... it is a crapshoot when you get married. It just is.
Yeah.
I mean, you do the best you can, evaluating whether you should or shouldn't. And like life, you have to take risk. And sometimes it doesn't work out to continue the relationship. But maybe it was good for the time it was in.
Of course.
So what I have read about millennials is they want to get married later in their 30s. Ergo, why I say I'm a millennial trapped in a baby boomer body. My goal was I'd never wanted to get married till I was 33. I wanted to live my life, have a career, and then I would know myself. That seems to be the millennial view. Boomers got married right out of college.
They got married right out of college in an era where they could get married right out of college. And I suppose maybe it's more so my preference for tradition, for tradition of, like starting a family, of doing this and that. And honestly, I never knew that millennials wanted to wait. I always assumed that they were the type that wanted to rush into things. At least the millennials I knew were very gung-ho about marriage. They wanted to get married as soon as they were able to. It's... Yeah, no, I really...
Well, the other
it's
reasons,
a little,
Okay, well, the other reasons I was reading and listening to for getting married later is you have your career intact.
Yeah.
You have money in the bank. Possibly you've removed most or all of that enormous student loan debt. And you were then you were more mature and financially better set to get married.
Yeah.
So for you, would you like to get married?
Not now. Definitely not now. And I know that that's not the encompassing opinion of Gen Zers. I know that more so than... Actually, no, now that I think of it, you're right. More so than the baby boomers would want to get married right out of college, I feel that Gen Zers are emulating that. They've taken it a step further where most people my age are married with children now.
You're kidding.
Yeah, and in an era where I think when I say my appreciation for baby boomers comes into play here, where a person would get married and have children in, let's say, the 50s and 60s, in an era where you could get married and have children.
And there was work available. That's the missing part, right? And there's
the problem is that there is work available in a Gen Zer's frame of reference. So, you check all 3 boxes there, but it is a matter of the person's work ethic. It is a problem of the person's attitude in Gen Z, where having a child, getting married, it isn't enough for them, And some people, on the flip side of that, it is enough for them to such a point that they stop doing everything that they do just so they can raise a child in an era where they can't raise their child. And, apologies if I'm maybe hitting a nerve or if I'm speaking too bluntly, but every single Gen Zer that I've ever met personally who has a child, who is married, A, does not last in that marriage for over a year, and B, does not take care of their child in the same capacity that, say, a baby boomer would take care of their child. What I mean by that is leaving children with grandparents, with a babysitter, still doing things that a 20-year-old should be doing, like going out and having fun while still having this child. And I think what it is the harsh reality that you cannot do both if you want to have. I mean, not to say that you can't have any fun when you have children.
I hope you can.
But it's more so of that attitude of, if you're doing this, why did you have a child in the first place? Okay? It's really unfortunate to see so many children grow up thinking that their mother or their father doesn't care about them just because they're not there. And at that age, it's really crucial because you need that parent interaction. The child's too young to go out and make friends. And obviously obviously I'm speaking to the choir right now, and I can't tell people to do or to not do certain things. But what I can recommend is, if you don't have everything figured out to a T, and if you feel like you want a child just because you want a child, step back and take a look at yourself and realize and ask yourself, is this where I want to be now? And am I willing to put another life into this world at the state I'm in? And if any of those boxes are no, then please hold back.
I think that's wonderful advice. I really, really do. I did grow up in a different era, by the way. In the 50s and 60s, I graduated from high school in 1970, and born in 52. That was the age where, mostly men worked and women didn't, professional moms.
Yeah.
And we needed them to be professional moms. We were a little demanding. We wanted activity. But dads were home at a certain time every day from work. We didn't have all the technology like email and devices that forced you to stay working. These devices did not make work easier. These devices, starting with the fax machine, made us all far too committed to working and not having a balanced life. So my dad was home at 5:30 every day. We had dinner as a family. Didn't mean we weren't screwed up. Everybody's screwed up. That's what human beings are. We learn how to unscrew ourselves.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what life is. You figure out how to be better people. But I did have the Norman Rockwell, at least, setting with all of the human challenges underneath it. So when I grew up on the East Coast, very family-centered.
There you go.
Yeah, very family-centered. When I moved to Los Angeles in the late 80s, and I had always worked, I had a huge work ethic. I loved working all the time. I did notice in this town that there were so many type A people. And this is a town where there's a lot of money. The film and television industry, and now the real estate industry, generates a lot of money. And in order to make a lot of money, you have to work all day long. Yeah. And you want a family, but you can't tend to the family.
Nope.
And my question was always of people that were those people I just described. Well, did you even think about why you wanted children if you don't want to interact with them and raise them? Oh, wow. Yeah. Have them later in life then. But that's kind of what you were saying.
Yeah, people believe that they can do it all. And I think the harsh reality is that you can't. You can't. The thing is, I don't dock someone's personal choice to have a child, to start a business, to have any sort of life-changing event in one's life that would either make someone happier, make someone's life more fulfilling. That's their business. I can't sit on a street corner and say, hey, don't do this. Okay? But if it comes down to a matter of circumstance where you're biting off more than you can chew, you can't take care of a child and run a business and do XYZ, or you're sacrificing another life for the sole purpose of your status, your clout, your this, that, and the other thing. Don't have the child. That's my advice, because people believe that they can have the nice car, have the nice house, have the the standard family, all the while not realizing it's all at the expense of maybe their spouse or their child.
Or their own health.
Or their own health. Exactly. So, you have a lot of people in Gen Z specifically, and a little bit in millennials, but more so Gen Z now that we've got to talking about it, who believe that they are invincible when they're not. Who believe that right out of high school, right out of college, that they're going to take over the world where they're not. They're going to settle down and they're going to realize that this is life and this is the life that I chose. And what sort of, touches a nerve personally is when they realize that it's not the life that they chose, but they settle down for a few years and they sort of, it's exciting at first and they get sort of in the rhythm of it. And then the rhythm starts to turn into a rut. And then it starts to become monotonous. And they're like, you know what? I got to be honest. I didn't really want this child. I didn't really want this marriage. I'm 23, 24 years old. I should be doing things a 23, 24-year-old does. And it's not until they realize what they've done that they realize that they regret it. And at that point, it's too late. You've already messed up the child enough to a point where you don't want it. And you're going to be neglectful of it. And that's just sort of the harsh reality of it. And people may say, no, I can do both. I can do both. Coming from a circumstance where, I'm not going to say who in the marriage was at fault, but the person at fault thought he or she could do both, and they couldn't.
And it has to be almost both, because you can't get married without the consent of both people, right?
Well, exactly.
It's so hard, but it really does look, at the end of all of this, Sebastian, that your parents did a great job and you did a great job on yourself. And I just think that the three of you should be commended, because I was so impressed with my conversation with you on the phone. Everything that you've done with your life, and you're not even graduated from college. I'm excited to see the future for you.
Thank you.
And as we end this episode now, I do believe that parents and their children would do well by looking at the projects you've worked on, either the things you've authored yourself or the projects and books you've illustrated for other people or published, because publishing is part of your mix, right? I really want people to know how to get in touch with you and your work for the purposes of the betterment of their family. So how do they get in touch with your work?
So in regards to, I would say, well, this could be both. In regards to maybe a business side / personal side, in case anyone would want to ask me any questions. So I'll give you just my standard email. So it's SEBOIBOOKACCT@gmail.com, and that line remains open for any sort of comments, concerns,
say
critiques.
It again. We'll say
of course,
it twice.
yeah. So it's SEBOIBOOKACCT@gmail.com. And I don't know if you embed it in your episodes, like you write it down or something, but that is my email, and it's available 24/7. Feel free to send me anything anytime.
And then if they Google you, what if they're driving and they can't take your phone number down? So how do we get you on Google?
So on Google, I could be reached a variety of ways. I know a lot of artists would, the standard is they have an online portfolio or a website, and that's sort of what I have, and I'll get into explaining that. So my portfolio, well, you could probably just find it by Googling my name. So if you Google Sebastian Schug, my name, or my pen name Nicholas Parker, you'll find a wide selection of all of my projects. Now, this isn't a complete itemized list. It is, but it's not, it's not showcased on Google yet. Google Analytics still has to update and showcase all my projects under my title on Google as publisher. But through there, you'll also be able to find my own publishing company, Sebastian Schug Publishing, where the website can be found there. It's called It's On the House Kid, It's exactly how it sounds, no...
It's on the house kid.
It's on the house kid, yeah.
By the way, Schug is spelled Schug.
Yes.
But anybody downloading this podcast episode will have your name attached.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so go ahead.
So it's onthehouse.kid.wordpress.com. And what that serves is not only, sort of a springboard for all of my projects and where you can buy it, but... buy them because there's a lot, but more so as an archive for everything that's listed there. So this covers both independent and co-authored projects as well.
Oh, wonderful. Excellent. Yeah. Sebastian, this has been a pleasure. I thank you so much for coming over here, and I will keep track of you and in touch with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to Constructive Uncoupling. I'm Judy Weigel. You can reach me at my email address, Judy, Judy, at constructiveuncoupling.com. Judy at constructiveuncoupling.com. I look forward to talking to you soon.